Hello, everyone. It's Charlene Lee here. I am an author and analyst, and I help leaders thrive with disruption. And today I'm going to be talking about what is leadership. And so, as we start getting into this topic, I want to encourage for those of you who are joining live to share where you're coming from, and also if you consider yourself a leader. I mean, how do you think about leadership? So, I really would love to get some questions, your thoughts about what leadership is. And in particular, as we get into discussion, what you think what leadership looks like and why it's also very important to have more of it today. We know that there are just some things about leaders that have always been true, but I think also given so many changes that are happening in the world today, there are new pressures, new skills, new mindsets that leaders are required to have in order to be successful. So want to encourage all of you to just, again, feel free to comment. Would love to hear from you, where you're coming from, and also any thoughts you may have, any questions you may have about leadership. This is the place to be talking about that. So one of the reasons why I'm really passionate about leadership is that as a person growing up, I saw myself as a leader, potentially being a leader. And yet when I told my family that I wanted to go into business, the first thing they said, well, how can you go into business? There's nobody who looks like you. I mean, the role models that I had growing up of what a leader looked like was a tall white man, typically older. And I don't know if you've noticed, but I can't see how tall I am, but I'm a short Asian woman. So I'm not going to look like or even see very many leaders who look like me. From a developmental standpoint, I am very passionate about talking what is leadership really? Is it about this traditional model of what we think a leader is? Or do we need to rethink what is a leader? Who is a leader? Who has the potential to be a leader? So just welcome a couple of people here. Robert, thank you so much for joining. Batha, also for joining. Again, just would love to know where you're coming from. Mudhusadan, thank you so much for joining here. And again, the nice thing that the nice thing about this session, these live streams, is again to just hear from you what you're thinking about and what your thoughts are about leadership. So let's get started. Are a couple things about what is leadership. First of all, it is a mindset. It is not a title. There are so many people who consider themselves to be leaders, but they don't even come close to having a title that says you are a leader. So I think the key thing about a leader isn't the fact that you are in a position or a title. It's more about the fact that you want to create change. In my mind, the definition of a leader is somebody who wants to create change. They see a problem, they see an opportunity, and they want to be able to make that happen. So you don't need a title, you don't need permission. You just have to see a change that needs to happen and be determined to say, and to have the confidence to say, I'm going to raise my hand and say, I could be that person. I could make that actually happen. And I like to say that if you're not creating change, then you're not a leader, you're a manager, which is fine. We need good managers to make sure things run, to make sure that things are being done efficiently. But when things need to change, you need a leader to step in and to make that happen. So I would love to ask all of you who are joining the stream, how many of you are leaders? Who amongst you would raise your hand and say you're a leader? And I would hope that every single person listening to this stream would actually say, of course, I see myself as a leader. I see that there needs to be change done in this world. And I can see myself leading that change. So I want to say a quick hello to some of the people here. I'm seeing some great comments here. Hi, Ava. Good hello to my friend there in Phoenix. Hello, Fida. Welcome. Trudy from Norway. Thank you so much for joining. Sir Leonard coming from Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining. And then we also have, I'm going to not say this correctly, Al Hanuf from Saudi Arabia. And then James, also Jay, it has a little comment. The inverse of leadership is how many courses in leadership are offered at HBS, which, again, as a grad from Harvard Business School, I can assure you, I learned some things about leadership, but the only way to truly learn about leadership is to be leading and to create that change. And then one of the other comments I see here is Murhazadan is saying leadership has positive behavior and positive growth. And of course, you have to be positive and optimistic that the change you want to create is actually possible. I'll say hello to a couple more people here. Simon coming in from Wales in the UK, Carla from Argentina, and then also Juan. Hello, thanks so much for joining. I'm going to have to stop because we'll never get through all this content I want to share with you today. I'll come back, and again, if you have questions or comments about leadership, I would love to hear from them. Please post them into the chat. So if you think about what leadership is, I want you to think about the best leader you've ever had the privilege of working with. So think about this person, have them in your mind, think about them and who they are and what they did. But more importantly than what they did or what they said, think about how they made you feel. And if you could just share it back into the chat, what is that word? Encapsulate that feeling into a word. And what is that word? What would that feeling be like? I mean, I've heard from some people that the feeling that they have is of, empowerment, that of the possible, that they felt challenged, that you felt like you could do anything. John has this comment. He says, I felt it's very insightful and very relevant. So thank you for sharing that, John. And the word that I think that comes up for me is the word limitless. I felt limitless from this one leader. I felt like I could do anything. I may not always do it well and completely succeed, but anything I set my mind on, I could do it. Here are some other beautiful, wonderful words. Renara says trust. I mean, when you feel trusted by somebody, again, that is a wonderful feeling. Simon says empowerment. And again, I think that's such a wonderful idea that you felt like you could take and do these things and that your leader trusted you to be able to do that. Simon also says it was okay to fall forward. I love this idea that if you're going to fall, you're going to just go forward just a little bit further to extend yourself, and it'll be okay to do that. And Edgar also says very just empowered and feeling this incredibly powerful. So I think this is so important to understand, because when you think about the best leaders, it is a relationship, and that's what leadership is. It's an ability to form a relationship with people who want to create that change. It's a relationship between somebody like you who aspires to create that change, who then inspires people to follow you, to make that change happen. That's all leadership is, and that's all it's ever been and ever will be. And it's as simple as that. So when we think about what relationships could look like in this world today, I mean, just think about how much has changed over the past year. We've had to completely change the way that we work, we connect. So much of it is digital. And I think that is one of the key and most important challenges that we face now as leaders, is how do we develop this relationship? How do we form a connection with people? And this is one of the most important things we'll be talking about over the next several weeks, is how do you be a leader for this day and age? We are facing so many transformations. We have the technology transformations that's forcing us to connect and have relationships and form them and deepen them in different ways. We have the pandemic that has created a whole new sense of what does it mean to work and what does it mean to be in a team when we don't sit next to each other. And we have found our own voices as employees and as team members, a stronger sense of this idea of agency, that I have power, I have accountability, I have ownership over the outcomes. And that is going to challenge and change leadership. And of course, we've seen this entire uprising and awareness of our consciousness around justice, social justice, economic justice. What is fair? How do we make sure that everybody who has the skills has also the opportunities to be able to advance as far as possible in their lives and their careers? So these are all challenges that we face as leaders. So I think what we're going to explore over the next few weeks in these streams with these conversations that we have with each other, but also with some guests I'm excited to bring in, we'll be talking about how do we become better leaders? How do we thrive in this highly disruptive world? So let me just look at some of these wonderful points that are coming through. We have this question. Let me see if I can find it. Um, Tushar is asking, is leadership as an owner versus leader as owner versus leader as team member? And I love this question because can you be a leader in a team where there are all these other leaders? That gets kind of messy then, right? There's a leader of a team, but if everyone is a leader, then who's actually leading the team? And this comes back to this idea of that relationship. And it's this wonderful idea of followership. Followership is, I think, the flip side of leadership. Leadership is about the change you want to create, the future you want to see. But followership is this relationship, and it defines a type of relationship you want with your fellow team members, with your followers. Do you want them to be like sheep? This is sort of the old authoritarian type of leadership. I tell you what we're going to do, and you will do it. No questions asked. You're just going to have to do it because you will be sheep and follow my leadership. That puts a tremendous amount of pressure on the leader, knowing exactly what the right thing to do is. But a different type of relationship, a different type of relationship with your followers is if they're your trusted partners. In many ways, they're your equals. And then your role as a leader, instead of dictating what people are going to do, is to say, this is the goal, this is where we want to go. I'm going to ask a lot of questions about how we get there, and together we're going to find the answers. That leads to a relationship that it reflects the words that we saw before: trusted, insightful, empowered, limitless, because then now you have all these people who feel a strong sense of agency and themselves, see themselves as leaders capable of making that change happen. So, are these leaders themselves? Yes, they are, because every single person on that team now sees themselves as the ability to lead, to create that change. And that is such a different mindset than being sheep. We have a couple other comments here. Um, the question also comes here from Robert. What's the center of attention of being strong-minded with the direction of a safe path to follow? In this whole question about seeing that future, having a destination and a place to go is, I think, a very essential part. How do you see the future? How do you set that change to be there? And the more audacious the change, the bigger the transformation, the harder the path will be, the more you're going to have to make sure that relationship is strong so that you can manage overcoming all of those obstacles, all those roadblocks we're going to have, no matter what. All right, so let's see. Let's see. I'm just going through and just looking at some of these other comments here. I love this one from Edgar. Leaders should be selfless and always there to guide and mentor. Edgar, thank you for sharing that, because it points to this wonderful idea that what are you trying to do as a leader? You're trying to create that change, but you're also trying to support everybody else around you to help you create that change. Some of you may be aware of this idea of servant leadership, which is a wonderful idea. You're here to serve and to lift up everybody around you to be the best that they can be. And it sometimes gets muddled because it feels like a servant is coming from a place of weakness. It's actually coming from a place of power, of confidence, of knowing that we are so secure and confident about the direction, about that relationship, that you're comfortable sharing the power and increasing as a result the power that is in the entire team. When we think about power as a scarcity versus something that's an abundance, we start thinking about things in a very different way. And in the past, power has been something that leaders must accumulate. And I still believe that you must accumulate power. But how you accumulate it and how you use it, I think the rules are very different today. Because in the past, Power was defined by position, by the titles that you have, your ability to give rewards or to met out punishments. But today we have a different form of power, one that is much more, it's called referential. It's about the references that you have, the expertise that you can bring, the networks that you have, again, the relationships that you build. And that type of power, in many cases, is even more powerful than any sort of positional power that you could aspire to. So we're going to be talking about power in greater detail in the next coming weeks, in the next few coming weeks. The other thing that I love this question coming from James. Unless I miss it, I haven't heard that a leader is a good listener. I'm getting to it because this is the next part about being a leader is you have to be able to see that future, set that change, think about that relationship. And then there is this whole issue of credibility. The credibility comes from your ability to execute, but also your ability to listen, to be able to hear and develop that relationship. So I like to say that and quote from Epictetus, who is a Greek philosopher back from from like 80, a long 2,000 years ago. And he had the saying, we were born with two ears and one mouth. And we should listen, we should use them in the same proportion. So listen twice as much as you speak. So when I'm working with some leaders who are having issues around their position and about getting change and transformation to happen, they keep saying, I go out there and I keep saying, come on, let's change. Let's go do this. I keep talking and saying this thing. And I encourage them to just stop and just go, don't talk anymore. Listen. Listen to what the challenges are. Ask for that feedback. Sit back and understand. And very importantly, empathy is what you want to aim for. That is what listening allows you to do, to hear, to understand, to empathize, to stand in somebody else's shoes and really understand where they are. Because until you do, how can you begin to inspire them, to encourage them to change if you don't know what the roadblocks are? So that's why, and Jay, thank you so much for raising that and having a great segue into this. Listening is a key skill that goes along with these different mindsets. All right, so I have a couple other topics on here. Again, thank you, Ava, for saying, love that easy to remember ratio of 2 ears to 1 mouth. Yes, absolutely. Al Hanouf says leaders should be supportive. Absolutely. Could you imagine a leader who wasn't supportive of you, somebody who comes up to you and is saying, why haven't you done this? How come we haven't done this? Why are you failing? And versus a leader who goes, what are the roadblocks you're facing? How do we do this in a different way? What do you see are ways that we could be doing this better, different, faster? So having a leader who fosters and encourages that relationship is so absolutely key. Let's see. I'm going to go on and talk about one last area of leadership, which is this whole idea of pursuing excellence rather than perfection. I hear from so many organizations I work with, these organizations who know they need to transform, know need to disrupt themselves, know they need to do things differently. And yet they're frozen because they feel if they can't do this thing perfectly well, if they can't ensure that nothing will fail, that failure is not an option, that they just won't move forward. They have to be absolutely sure. I worked with one hospital where they had as one of their values to do no harm. But as a result, they wouldn't take any risk, do anything differently unless they could be 100% sure that they would do no harm, that they would never make a mistake. And I had to point out to them, your patients, your community isn't asking you to be perfect. They're asking you to be excellent, that you do the best that you can, that you come prepared, that you are encouraging everyone to be the best that they can be, because that's all we could ever ask ourselves. That doesn't mean being perfect. And I think this idea of perfection, of not being able to fail, not being able to make mistakes, is one of the most difficult things that we as leaders and leading teams has to overcome. I hear it over and over again. We cannot fail. We cannot lose money this quarter. We can't talk about the obstacles we may encounter. We have to get rid of all of them before we can begin the journey. And I would say an answer to this is that leadership is a practice. It is an art. There is a science behind it. But because it's an art, you realize it will never be perfect. Art is not about perfection. It is about excellence. I'll give a personal example. As I was growing up, I loved playing the piano. In fact, I would practice all the time. I became a concert pianist, was at a competitive level all the way through high school. And in my final year in high school, in my senior year, I was at the statewide competition in Michigan, very competitive, at the very top of my game, and practice and practice and practice to try to again perfect my pieces for that competition. And the day of that competition, I showed up and I had a terrible head cold. And so I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go in and do my best. I practice. I'm ready for this day. So I'm performing. And then all of a sudden, one of my contact lenses pops out and I stop playing. Then the three judges are saying, what's wrong? What happened? I go, my contact lenses fell out. And they all jumped up and said, okay, wait, don't move. We're going to go and find it for you. So they were crawling all around my piano bench looking for this contact lens. And they found it and they go, please go, no, go out and put it back in, go to the bathroom, come back in, and we can start over again. So at that point, I'm sitting here thinking, all is lost. There's no way I can really compete. I may just go in and just do it and play my heart out and do the best. Of course, you know what happened? I played incredibly well because this tension of trying to perform perfectly was let go. And I could really dig into the performance that I wanted to give. And I gave it all because I got nothing to lose. Made mistakes here and there, and I just kept going. And as a result, I won the competition. Maybe it's because I had them calling on the floor looking for my contact lens and they had a bond with me. But in the end, knowing that I didn't need to be perfect allowed me to be excellent. And I would encourage us that this is one of the things that we want to be as leaders. We want to be able to encourage all the people we work with, the people we touch, not just on our teams, but throughout our organizations, in our communities, our customers, our partners, our stakeholders and shareholders, to be the best that they can be, to be excellent. And this is the main reason why I am so passionate around areas of equity and inclusion and belonging and diversity, because it allows all of us to be the best that we can be, to be excellent. And who wouldn't want that for ourselves and for the people around us? And so these are some of the key things that I think are so important. And we're going to be talking about a lot of this idea over the next couple of weeks. I do want to share that one of my favorite people, who's a great thought leader, her name is Erica Darwan. She has this book. I'm going to grab it over here. It's off my desk. She has this amazing book called Digital Body Language that is coming out next Tuesday. I encourage you to get it if you can. She'll be coming onto the stream next week to talk about the book and about, in particular, this whole area of how we need to change as leaders to be able to connect with each other. I think it's going to be an action-packed, full of great insights and actions that you can take to be a better leader. I'm tearing through this book. There are these 4 laws of being a better leader, of digital body language, that I think all of us need to understand and be able to practice, and you can put it to work right away. So these are some of the things that we're going to be going over in the next couple of weeks. How do you connect and build trust in a digital world? Some other topics we'll be going into is how do you let go of the need to be in control? I know that as an early in my stage as a leader, I was finally in a position to run things. And it was really hard to realize I didn't actually run anything, that I wasn't actually in control. So how do I get things done? How do we deal with uncertainty? How do you deal with when we have a group of people who are resistant to change? How do you start breaking that down? Especially important as we deal with these large transformations. Inevitably, you're going to run into people who are passionate about what you want to do, but just don't want to change? How do you connect with them and get them to see the possibilities and begin to make those hard changes? And then how do you manage a career these days? What's even a career? What does it look like? How do we think about how we are going to develop ourselves? And also, how do we develop and scale leadership in our organization? So much to talk about. I hope you'll join me. We're going to be here on these various channels at 9 o'clock Pacific time and 12 o'clock Eastern Coast time on Tuesday mornings. Pacific time. I'm here in San Francisco, and I hope that you'll actually join me with all of these. I wanted to say again, thank you so much to all of you for joining, the wonderful comments and the participation that you had. And I will hopefully see you all next week. All right, take care and have a great day.